Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and across from me is the doctor himself.
She bangs. She bangs. I don't know why that's in my head.
You know, it was the first song like digitally recorded.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, that's the song that like integrated like digital recording.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So like now you learn something.
That's pretty cool.
See, this podcast is not just about everything else we do.
Well, now that we've reached our education quota.
Yeah. Come. She bangs. Yeah, she does. Nice.
Cool. Yeah, baby.
Each week we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you.
That's right.
And some of you listeners might be queer. Welcome to May.
What?
It's not necessary. I didn't say anything bad. It's just
You
the
didn't,
tonality.
but that's the... I think that's the weirder thing about it.
Yeah.
You said something totally neutral that still felt like it offended me.
Yeah, it's like when you say Jews or Mexicans. It feels like
I don't know that it's exactly like that, but
it feels like it's a slur.
I think it's because you said some of you. I don't know. Something about it felt weird.
Yeah, you can pick it apart. I didn't actually say anything wrong.
However, I will say,
yeah,
we've cultivated a very lovely community of folks
LGBTQ,
folks from all
2S plus,
folks from all identities and backgrounds.
Yes.
But yes, this is May, a month where we're going to be talking about queer characters, queer creators, queer stories in DC.
Because Doc had no other fucking choice.
All because I can't believe a coupon got turned in.
Baby, there's 12 months in this year.
I'm determined to make...
I'll use them all up by Docmas.
I'm determined to make this like a fun, educational, good month of talking about some cool-ass comics.
And then there's what I'm going to do. No, I'm going to use all those coupons by the end of this year.
I mean...
I'm not going to tell you when. You'll never know.
I mean, that's the point of them. I just thought you were going to forget about them forever. I've been impressed that that's not.
Did I do that until I started moving? Who's to say?
Was something else on your mind?
I don't know. I was changing the studio up, and so it wasn't the top of my list.
Right.
But it's right over there. I look at it all the time.
Yeah, baby.
But yeah, welcome to May.
It's funny when you don't get the intonation right.
Yeah. And today's episode is Queer Patrol.
Are you just not going to read the review that I put in the doc?
You didn't put it in there.
I did.
Well, then you did it late in the day.
You always do this as we're sitting here.
But I didn't.
So that's not my fault. I'm going off your usual routine.
That's not my fault.
I'm totally prepared.
Yeah. I mean, you just used to do it like the day before.
Well, I guess I'll do your job as well then.
Oh,
as
great.
well cash in that coupon.
I mean, that is a thing, but we're not doing that for this episode. I have special purposes for that one.
Give me a second here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're not ready again?
Well, you know, I'm just trying to pick up the slack. Yeah, so not only is May going to be like a fun chat about queer characters and that, we're also going to fight the whole time. So strap in.
Yeah, we're setting a great example for male and male relationships.
This is a 5-star review, number 209 from Dash.
Oh, turn off the podcast.
I don't know if it's that Dash or not.
I would love that he had gotten old enough because we've been doing this for so long.
He might be.
Right?
God, that would make me feel so old. 5-star review says,
I've been listening to these since I was a kid.
My dad never lets me listen. Review says, I was looking for a good DC podcast, but
couldn't find one, so I started listening to these.
Hang on. I was looking for a good DC podcast and found this one. And
doesn't say.
And I'm so glad I did.
Oh, okay.
It is one of the funniest podcasts I have ever listened to.
Holy shit! Well, we are,
which
the
I think
funniest
means
podcast
that
in
he
Canada.
Discovered podcasts and we're the only one he subscribed to.
Hell yeah! Of all of the podcasts, one.
Yeah,
this is the best.
One of one are the funniest I've ever heard.
Yeah. We're not second of one.
No,
which is good.
We're 7 of fine.
Yeah. 7 of nice.
Yeah, tuned into the double this week.
That's right.
Yeah, no. So we're kicking off this month by talking about the Doom Patrol because I
They
mean,
have a history.
I mean, there's a pretty significant history of a lot of different like gender and sexual identities and expressions and stories and stuff like that in Doom Patrol comics. The show takes that even to like another level, and like to the point, at least for me, that it's not like this is mandated or like an actual thing of the team at all. But I would just say the Doom Patrol's a queer superhero. Like,
Yeah.
in my head, as
That's synonymous with that.
that's
comic.
how I go. Like, well, I'm reading the Doom Patrol. Like, over half the members are. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Which is funny because then
if you
have
had a
to-
superhero team with like 4 French people on it, you'd be like, that's the French.
yeah,
you know, like
fair, yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about the Doom Patrol. Is like that's where you'd expect to see stories that are kind of like wading into like telling interesting perspectives and maybe giving a little insight into kind of marginalized stories or perspectives or things like that. And I just feel that way about the Doom Patrol. If I was reading the Doom Patrol or like if I was reading some sort of like compilation, like a Pride thing or whatever, I almost feel like it's like, well, Doom Patrol should kind of always have a spot in here. You know what I mean?
It is interesting though because I think like it's crazy that you have to go to the Doom Patrol to get queer characters, at least in an abundance, considering that it's like you're dealing with like superpowers and like wild like transforming figures and stuff in the rest of comics.
I will say in the last 10 years that has changed more and
It's
more and
improved,
more, and
for
it's no
sure.
longer really the case. There's
Yes.
a lot of queer characters.
Probably not as enough, but
Probably not, but also Superman.
markedly
you know
more.
what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's like it's changed, but you're totally right that like when Morrison and Pollock in particular were doing like Doom Patrol in the kind of late 80s, early 90s or whatever that that those runs were, that was like it was a lot less common and it was a lot less explored. And you're right, you did have to kind of go to this like obscure corner, like you had to go to the quote like artsy book, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, truly though.
to explore those things, yeah. Kind of the proto Vertigo era, because that was sort of before Vertigo had totally manifested as an idea either,
That's
So,
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with that, why don't we open up the questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
First questions come from Twitter.
Twitter. Sorry, actually, just before you do this first question,
Uh-huh.
I feel like I've gotten out of the habit of doing this.
Oh.
Because I take for granted that you just like know some stuff now.
Yeah.
But like, other than the show, how much Doom Patrol like have you encountered? Like, do you have a bunch of Doom Patrol comics, or is that like not part of like what you've got?
It's they're definitely a group that I like enjoy the concept of. I've got a bit of it. I'm just pulling up what I actually have right now. It's not anywhere near as much as that I wish that I have, but I've got a few issues of volume 2. I've got the like a hardcover like volume 6 like trade.
That's the volume 6 is the
yes, Gerard Way one, which is why I have it.
Yeah.
But I think it's like his second one.
right.
But yeah, not anywhere near as much as that I wish that I had. I think that they are super interesting, and I think there's a thing with like new DC TV and movies that slightly worries me that I'm going to like love the TV version too much, and then when I get into the thing, it's going to like set expectations that I'm not going to be able to do that.
Right, like you actually might not like the source material.
Yeah,
as much,
which is I'm slightly worried about, but I do love. I mean, it's right up my alley. Like I should get more of it.
yeah.
The reality is, there's not that much out there. Like, there's not that much Doom Patrol.
I mean, there's
How many volumes? Six, like at this point, 9 maybe?
6 or 7.
7, yeah.
There's a new series that's just started,
okay.
Unstoppable
So again,
Doom Patrol.
Not that many volumes, but within that.
But the like Morrison, Pollock, whoever else was on that run, like that Doom Patrol run goes like well over 100 issues.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah.
The original run might go over 100 issues too, which is different, but
yeah. So I think like
there is stuff out there. There's like the Burn run and
yes.
Like there's.
But it's a series that I haven't collected as much as I think I probably should have. but it's definitely one that I have a huge interest with. I think I've fallen slightly off of the TV show.
I haven't seen season 4 yet.
Yeah,
I've got to do that.
I don't even know if I finished season 3.
Oh, I definitely did. With the Brotherhood of Dada.
Yeah, I don't think I finished it.
Oh, okay.
So I think that I'm missing some like key points that might be slightly interesting that I haven't really followed up with. But it's definitely a group that I like, and I know a lot of the characters now, I think, and we've seen them pop up in other places. But yeah, no, it's definitely a gap.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't own as much Doom Patrol as I would like to.
Totally.
But I've read a decent amount.
Yeah.
But I wish I had more of it, for sure.
All right, let's do the first question.
Okay.
From Colin J. Video, who asks, who's a fun person for Danny the Street to date? And who can handle all that street?
Ooh, what you gonna do with all that street? All that street on which you eat. Eat up on that street.
I'm gonna put my feet on that street.
Ooh.
Yeah. Step on his neck.
So Danny the Street, who is a sentient location.
Yes. Yeah, not actually just a street.
No, because Danny has grown to be a world.
Has also been as small as an ambulance.
Even smaller. Danny's shrunk down to a brick.
Oh, sure,
when he's hiding from the gentrifiers.
Yeah.
He became Danny the Brick.
What are the gentrifiers about?
If you could imagine. He was Danny the Bungalow for a bit.
Sure.
He's been Danny the Ambulance, you're right.
Yep.
He's taken on a few forms, but he's essentially a sentient location.
It's like a block.
Yeah, more or less. When
like the buildings and the shops and the houses that are on a block, but like a street block.
Now, I will say that trying to remember from the Morrison run.
Like, did he have any relationships in that time?
Well, Danny in that run is described as, well, I mean, they probably back then used the word transvestite, but he was cross-dressing. And the way that manifested is that there'd be like a shop on Danny the Street that would sell like motorcycles, but then there'd be like frilly lace things in the window.
Oh, okay.
So like, that's how cross-dressing manifested on Danny the Street.
Okay.
I don't remember too much about like actual relationships. The show goes an extra step, I think, and makes Danny non-binary.
Yes.
Where in the comics, Danny is more or less, I think, identifies as male. That might be different now too because of the show, but back in that Morrison run, pretty sure.
Yeah. I mean, we also like a lot like
but the queerness of Danny was a little bit more about like how the Danny expressed gender and a little less about like actual relationships. I think is my memory of that.
Sure.
But who would be interesting? I think this question like wants you to go like, well, what are the other sentient locations?
Sure.
Mogo ranks sentient city, like there's like shit like that.
But I think Danny's connected to people.
I think Danny has like stronger interpersonal relationships with people.
Yeah. Because he cares so much about taking care of people and like loving people, and
like Rebus lived there for a bit.
Yeah,
in the comics and stuff.
I think it's more realistic.
Doom Patrol was based in Danny.
Oh wow,
for a while. Tough question though.
Let's reverse the question a bit. Are there like any like notable like pansexual like characters in DC?
Well, that's tricky too because I'm not 100% sure who has come out as specifically pansexual.
Sure, yeah.
There are lots of characters with sort of fluid sexualities, or even if they're defined, they're relatively open. Like I think what I'm saying with this is I'm thinking of someone like John Constantine,
Sure, yeah.
who is, I think, strictly speaking, bisexual.
Sure.
But also, like,
Does that go to the
demons.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Because I think that's the other
monsters,
question,
like,
right? Yeah.
Like,
Very Kirk, like.
You know what I mean? Like, there's that, like, at a certain point, I think it's more about, like, that connection you make and a lot less about all of the other kind of, trappings. So that's what I mean when I say, like, I don't know that John Constantine is explicitly pansexual.
But, like, there are characteristics of pansexuality.
That's kind of how I feel about
So
that.
is there anybody else?
I don't think, I'm not putting Constantine in the running here because I think Constantine is, like, way too jaded, cynical, hard-edged for someone sweet like Danny.
So is there anybody else like that? Or in reverse, any other beings that are not human that have had relationships with potentially like humans or other aliens?
Right. Man, it's an interesting question.
Tougher than it might seem. Yeah.
It is tougher. My instinct, I think, is still to kind of stay within the Doom Patrol sphere. I might say I might say someone like I actually don't know. I don't know that I have an answer to this.
Wow.
Can you think of someone?
Is there any like extra dimensional characters or anything like that?
Oh, I mean, all sorts. Lots of like one-offs, one and done kind of things, or whatever. There's lots of characters that come from elsewhere. I mean, I guess the character I probably would most put forward would be like Flex Mentallo or something like that, maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm not sure I 100% like love
together.
that
I don't ship them.
I don't think I do. Interesting.
I mean, here's the thing. Let me make
the negative spirit, like negative man thing is slightly interesting.
Yeah.
But negative man in the comics is a lot different than negative man on the show.
Okay.
Like negative man in the comics, I think even still isn't gay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There is this brief era where Negative Man and a doctor named Eleanor Poole and the Negative Spirit were merged together into a kind of like intersex being called Rebus.
Yeah. McIntyre.
Yeah, Rebus McIntyre. But I
damn it, Hoyt.
And you know, maybe Rebus and Danny, maybe. I don't know. It's a really hard question. I think what's hard about it for me personally is I feel like my conception of Danny is a lot younger.
Oh, okay.
And I think it feels weird for me. And I don't even know if that's supported necessarily by anything. But I think when I read Danny, I read a character that's very wise, but generally like young.
Okay.
And I think that's maybe where I'm getting hung up is that because it feels like people want to take care. Like Danny has this very kind of like hopeful, you know, accepting thing that I feel I feel like conveys youth. Like it hasn't been beaten out of Danny. And there's also everyone has such stewardship over Danny. Like it's not necessarily parental, but they care about Danny. They want to look after them. And so I think that's where I'm getting hung up. Is it feels like weird to me to ship people with Danny because I'm like not 100% sure how maturity-wise how old I feel Danny is.
All right, I'm going to take a wild swing.
Go for it. I would love a wild swing. Let's have it.
This is a character that doesn't necessarily had any like queer relationships or anything like that.
Okay.
But is an alien that has had human relationships. So I feel like there's a potential way through this.
Hit me.
Martian Manhunter.
I knew that's what you were going to say. And other than my last point,
yes,
I don't dislike it. I'm interested.
Yeah, I think
there's a telepathic bond.
Totally.
What is shape or form of Martian Manhunter? There's a lot to like about that. I don't hate that.
I think that's my pitch.
I'm interested. I don't hate it.
There's some, maybe one of the stores could provide a specific delicious treat that Martian Manhunter may want.
Well, I mean, we're getting into a sort of dealer junkie territory there, I think. But I don't hate that. I like it.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
I think that's my pitch.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
All right, let's go to the next question. From our favorite religious representative.
Ooh, Chris Chan.
Who asks, has there always been queer or sexually ambiguous characters in Doom Patrol since its inception? If so, how were such characters treated in less progressive times?
As far as I can tell, the kind of main that thrust of like kind of queer storytelling that we sort of associate with the Doom Patrol is from that like Morrison Pollock.
What volume is that?
I can't remember, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Actually, or less. But it's from that era.
Sure.
When the Doom Patrol also kind of went into this more esoteric. I mean, the Doom Patrol has always been weird.
Yeah.
Like in their adventures.
It's been always queer, but not necessarily queer.
Like the pitch of them is the world's strangest heroes.
Yeah,
We've talked about the X-Men thing between the Doom Patrol and the X-Men, right? The Chief is a sort of like psychotic.
It's like a perverted version
of psychotic Professor X. I mean, I know Professor X has his own baggage, but the Chief is sort of a psychotic. What if Professor X made the mutants?
Yes.
That's the Chief.
Yeah.
Who through like orchestrating horrific accidents and mad science, and that creates these people that are viewed as freaks or whatever,
totally,
that are outcasts, and then he brings them together as a team or whatever.
Yeah.
So they and their adventures always had a kind of like, they were always supposed to be on the fringe of things, but in that original run, and I apologize, I'm only going to think of Arnold Drake, but there's 2 other creators that are part of that. In that original run, that was more about the freakishness of science fiction. Animal, vegetable, mineral man. Half of his head is a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Like you could see it in the designs of things. Robot man is a human brain and a robot body. Like it was about the mad science horror of that kind of stuff. The reinterpretation in that later series, that kind of like Vertigo or proto-Vertigo series, is to reinterpret the idea of being on the fringe. It's like they're outcasts.
Yeah.
But are they outcasts because they're like a freaky brain in a robot body, and because they can't hold their form, or because they have a radioactive ghost in them? Or are they outcasts because they've always been outcasts? Because they, have a different gender identity, or they have a different sexual orientation, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they're,
something that makes them an other.
Or they have a psychological disorder like Crazy Jane, or they, like all of these different things. Like that's the reinterpretation of what it means to be, on the fringe. And I think it's strong. I think it's like exactly where the Doom Patrol should live.
Totally.
There's a reason that we keep revisiting the Doom Patrol. We reap there's a lot more Doom Patrol comics than there are Metamorpho.
Yeah.
Metamorpho's a cool concept too, but there's a lot more Doom Patrol comics.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason for that. But as far as I can tell, the kind of the queerness of the Doom Patrol doesn't start until that kind of like late 80s, early 90s thing. And then it keeps developing from there with a brief interregnum of John Byrne going, "Not in my book. They're science-y." Like the two are like, you can't coexist.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like stuff undone in that Byrne run. You go like, all right. If I'm not mistaken, it's during the Byrne run where Rebus mysteriously defuses. And then so instead of being Larry and Eleanor in the negative spirit, just goes back to just being Larry in the spirit.
Oh my God.
I'm 80% positive that's the Byrne run.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave Twitter and head on over to Instagram.
Now we're going to Instagram, take some questions and answer them.
First question comes from Dem Jankies, who asks, so what exactly is Danny? Are they actually just a street, or are they some kind of magic parasite or alien or something?
So, if I remember correctly, the term for the type of being that Danny is a genius loci.
Oh,
or a genius I guess it would be a genius locus. singular.
Which is just like a type. It's like
It's
location.
a location capable of thought.
Sentient.
And a sentient location.
Yeah.
So
it is what it says it is.
a genius locus. The other genius loci that we've talked about are like Mogo, the sentient planet, Ranks, the sentient city.
Yeah.
They're out there. Like we mentioned, Danny hasn't only been a street, but Danny is, primarily a street and teleports places. And I think this people get hung up on this. Like, does a street fall from the sky and crush an existing street? It's like, no. Danny is like a spirit that like physically teleports, but also inhabits whatever the street is.
But also can produce a street in an absent area as well.
Yes, totally. So that's part of it. But also, like, if Danny went to
New York
to Broadway, Danny would become Broadway.
Yes.
Danny would teleport. All the people living on Danny would go there too. But Danny
and he might change the architecture of Broadway.
But Danny would like incorporate into it. It wouldn't like he's not just drop out of the sky and crush a bunch of people or like
it's not a floating city.
It's weird because there is a physical element with the teleportation, but there's also more of kind of like a spiritual inhabiting of a place. It's a relatively high concept. It's hard to wrap your brain around. The best course of action is just to go with it.
Yeah.
But Danny has been, a brick. There's a bungalow briefly on Oolong Island when that's where all of the like mad scientists and stuff were after Infinite Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Danny's been an ambulance. Danny has been a world. Danny's been one or two other things too that that aren't coming to me. But yeah, I mean, can take a lot of forms. Danny the Ambulance is one of my favorites. That's from the from that Gerard Way, Doom Patrol run. You get Danny the Ambulance. That's the series where you get Casey Brink.
Who's that?
She's also known as Space Case. Was like kind of a new character added.
Oh, okay.
Casey is a fictional character from Danny Comics. So a comic Danny made, brought to life.
Oh, wow.
So Casey kind of like, in a sense, doesn't exist.
Okay.
She's a fictional being in the real world.
Oh.
And there's a thing in that
So
run.
did Danny create her then?
Yes.
Okay.
As like a creator of a fictional work.
But like as an extension of him then?
Only because Danny manifests things in reality.
Yeah.
So Danny had like a thought, like an artistic creation that, because of the nature of Danny and how stuff manifests physically, came into the real world. But Casey Brink is essentially fictional. She doesn't exist, but she lives in the real world.
Okay.
She ends up in a relationship with a character called Nada, who I can't remember how, but is like nothing.
I mean,
is born of like nothing. It's like a gap. And they have a child together.
How is that even possible?
Totally. And that child, they go like, what do you get when a thing that doesn't exist has a baby with nothing?
Yeah.
And what there ends up being a story where this kind of like outside force called retcon, they take the baby that is this like kind of gap and they turn it into a fictionalized version of Superman called Milkman Man.
Oh.
And it starts this event called Milk Wars.
That is Milk Wars, okay.
That it's the Justice League and the Justice League of America rather, and Doom Patrol team up, and Retcon is trying to sell off reality to the highest bidder.
Wow.
And MangaCon is trying to buy reality.
Wow.
And Milkman Man is at the center of that. And Milkman Man is the child of Casey Brink and Nada.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of weird kind of pieces there, but that tracks back to Danny too. And that's part of how Danny's powers work, is because it's half this spiritual thing and half a physical thing. That's how Casey can even exist.
Crazy.
Danny created her and then she was real.
So is it magic?
I think magic's probably the best shorthand for it.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not sure that it's magic the way even a character like Dr. Fate would describe it.
Sure.
But I think it's closer than science.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair.
I think it's closer to the kind of quote, like the cosmology of the DC universe itself. You know, when we talk about like writers and creation and how each universe is a comic book, and like Danny's tapped into that, which is partly also why Casey is an interesting character to come from Danny Comics. So Danny is almost more like that thing between science and magic, where it's like the nature of reality itself is kind of like the direct funnel of Danny's powers a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's ever been described like specifically that way. Mm-hmm. But it's something that is like a little bit science because it's like the rules of physics of this world. But it's also a little bit magic because it's like the act of creation, you know.
All right, next question from Max Nopo, who asks, is anyone in Doom Patrol not queer, or at least could credibly have a queer subtext?
Yeah, I mean, Elastawoman, Rita is notably not queer.
Yeah.
Unless like a very recent comic has done something, but she marries Steve Dayton, who goes by Mento.
Yeah.
You know, we saw him on the show too. She marries him for a bit. She's the sort of like foster, like adoptive mother of Beast Boy.
If she had a subtext, what do you think it would be? Like, do you think it's like for either like physical or mental disability potentially, or like anxiety, that kind of thing? Like
she's had
mental health.
She's had. I mean, it's probably more generally on the mental health side. The show has a very specific thing about confidence, self-image, and stuff like that, where she can't hold her form. If she, you know, like the show has a very particular take. In the original, like, 60s Doom Patrol, her thing was more that she was, like, rejecting the idea of being a housewife because she liked being a superhero.
Sure, yeah.
So she was, like, that was, like, the
crazy,
big, whoa, we're really on the fringes here.
Yeah.
This woman wants to work.
Yeah.
Like, kind of, like,
sure.
You know what I mean? Like, we were doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that, I don't think she's had much in the way of kind of, like, queer subtext. Robot Man, pretty definitively straight,
but huge subtext,
but
or an analogy
specifically in the Pollock run there's kind of a trans allegory to Robot Man, and part of that is as he navigates his relationship with an actual trans character, Kate Godwin, Coagula. But there is like a little bit of like Robot Man exploring like what does it be like I'm a human. I'm not in a human body. Like,
The outside doesn't match the inside.
The idea of that dysphoria kind of piece. There's definitely like, I wouldn't even call it subtext. It's relatively text. For Robot Man, that's definitely in there. I mean, like I said, in the comics, Negative Man, it's like straight.
Wow.
Had a thing for Rita in the early days.
Yeah.
But Negative Man has also, because he's tied to the negative spirit, and that's like a weird ghost energy being kind of thing. There was that thing, the Rebus thing, where he becomes like one of three parts of this new intersex being called Rebus.
Yeah.
There was also a time where Larry's physical body was destroyed and he possessed the body of Valentina Vostok, the negative woman.
Oh, wow.
So Larry has had these kind of like living as different forms, living in different bodies and different genders. So he's had experiences beyond the confines of his original physical shell.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's necessarily registered as an exploration of queerness, because it's always in the context of either like a possession and then Larry's kicked out again, or like when they merge as Rebus, they form a new being.
Sure.
You know, like Eleanor's memories are in there, Larry's personality's in there, but there's something new. It's like a Tuvix scenario. Sure. You know what I mean? They're not just like two drivers of a body.
Yeah.
So it's also a little different. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, those are kind of your kind of original Doom Patrollers are generally straight, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's go to the next question from Eventobot, who asks, is Negative Man gay in the comics? I mean, we talked about that. If so, when was this revealed? If not, why did they make this change for the live action series?
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
No, but Larry has had these kind of other experiences.
Totally.
Has had an experience in the body of Valentina Vostok.
But more
has had
importantly,
an experience as a composite part of Rebus.
Yeah. Why do you think they made this change for the TV series?
Maybe, I mean, probably on one level because it's actually like one of the most traditional relationships in the show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're talking about like non-binary places, and you know, like the show goes to more like levels. You know what I mean? And Larry ends up kind of being like a gay man who had a gay relationship. He's actually like pretty standard. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he's pretty like he faces that kind of like the sort of like the baseline discrimination of being gay in the 60s in America, in the Air Force and stuff like that. It's interesting to see even, you know, Larry has that perspective. And I think it's kind of nice to have someone, because I think from what I understand, the LGBTQ plus community is not like, it's not a monolith.
Yeah.
Not everyone's holding hands and stuff like that. There are people from, that identify as one of those letters that like do not necessarily look out for or change their behaviors to advance the cause of people that identify some of the other letters. Like we even hear about like gay and lesbian people who can't even wrap their heads around being bisexual.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And I think what's nice on the show is to have a character that like has on the surface just like a gay relationship. It's like one of the first letters in the acronym.
Yeah.
But then Larry is also this like deeply empathetic, very welcoming person. I think it's nice to show that kind of like that outstretched hand, the inclusion like within the community piece. I think Larry's really good about that on the show. I don't know if that's why, but I think that's a nice element of having Larry there,
My guess is that, I mean, with like queerness being so now like synonymous with Doom Patrol, and Larry's relationship is really the only, like, at least in the first 2 seasons, the only real like romantic relationship that's really explored.
Yeah, I suppose that's true too, actually.
And so if you're going to show a romantic relationship and trying to do something that feels Doom Patrol, you're going to make it a queer relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you're also right. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the only romantic relationships.
Yeah. So it
there's
feels
a lot of different kinds of like open.
Well, and eventually you get like Flex Mentallo and that.
But Flex Mentallo and like Elastin Woman, it's not. It's not
even sexual.
It's not even sexual.
Yeah.
Robot Man and Crazy Jane has a more kind of parental thing to it. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Actually, one of the only.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
So that would be my guess, is why it's like, well, we're going to have a romance story. It should be a queer one for it to feel like Doom Patrol. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's go to the next question, which means we're leaving Instagram and we're heading over to the Doc Scored.
Oh, fuck.
Nice. Yeah, it's good. You're doing a great job.
Shut the fuck up. I'm thinking.
You got a Doc Scored.
No. Shit.
Come on, what's been in your head?
Hey, you're a Doc Scored bitch, but your Doc's so good I score on top of it. But Docs, I'm scoring you all night.
Docking all down my back.
Doc.
Wow, where did that come from?
No idea. No idea.
No idea. No clue. Yeah. Wow, I haven't thought about that song in a really long time.
What a weird song.
Yeah, that and like around the same time, like Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. Like,
Yeah. Dum da da dum da da dum da da dum da da da. Dum da da dum da da dum da da dum da 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 da.
What?
That's how the song begins.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't even remember that part.
That song played all the time in my high school.
I mean, of course, yeah. You were in fucking real country bumpkin town
I mean,
for
a lot of
Ontario.
poser country bumpkins. Yeah. There's people with more country cred than my high school, but for city kids, we were the country high school. Yeah.
All right, first question comes from Dante's Fire, who asks, can Danny the Street teleport to Scartaris or Atlantis? Would he need oxygen? Can he teleport through space to Oa? Also, has Danny the World ever had sex with Mogo?
I think we need to I think we've got to just understand that when we're talking about sentient locations, I don't think they conceive of sex the way we do.
Sure, yeah.
You know, like,
yeah,
I don't think Mogo like mounts.
Yeah.
You know, like, I imagine
like a mountain peak's not going into a sewer pipe. Or
I
something,
imagine planetary sex is like one of your moons, dusts particles over the other. Like, it's something else.
There are children listening, Reed.
Sorry, Dash. Turn off the podcast.
Is that a facial?
You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Jesus. Like in the Orlando Martian Manhunter thing, where they're like goopy, like taffy. You know, like, why would Martians fuck the way we do? You know. So I think right away, I mean, A, no.
Yeah.
And B, if they did, it's not what you think.
Yeah.
It would be something like very different, you know?
Sure, yeah.
It would almost, I bet what it would be like you form a binary system.
Yeah.
Your civilizations start communicating with each other. Like,
sure,
you'd be like you'd see rocket ships go, like, it would be something like that, I think. First part of this. How does Danny teleport? Yeah. I see no reason Danny has to breathe.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we've gotten any specific examples of him like
I think
proving that
like,
he hasn't, but
things like Atlantis and Scartaris are not off the table.
Yeah.
I imagine Danny has to have some sort of understanding of those places, though, or where they are. Danny knows where most cities are.
Yeah.
Right? Some of these like hidden places. Themyscira.
Yeah.
Danny might not. I think that's almost certainly confined to the Earth, though. I don't think Danny could.
Like, whatever is allowing him to do that is probably confined to Earth.
For Danny to go off-world, I think necessitates like turning into something smaller, or be Danny the Rocket.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? And then going somewhere else. I don't think Danny, as the Street, could just teleport to name a planet, like Goragar or something like that.
Yeah.
But like Danny the Brick can go on a spaceship somewhere else or whatever. So I'm relatively confident in saying Danny's teleporting is confined to the Earth.
He's never
and
shown
confined
any
to like a general understanding of like where places are.
He's never done like a wild transformation to like a different part of the Earth, like super far away, right? Like,
I don't think so. Although you get, like, I don't think so. I don't think we ever like seen Danny like in the heart of the jungle. But I think there has to be. Danny's got to have some sort of general sort of sense of where a thing is.
Yeah, totally.
Teleporting powers are kind of funny anyway. Like, even if you take out the fact that like Danny's has another weird layer to it, but like just in general, it's like, do you have to see where you're going?
Yeah.
And even if you could see it, like, how do you actually make that happen? Where do you go?
Yeah.
Are you just blipping
there, or are you going through?
Or are you going through
like Nightcrawler?
teleporting powers have all sorts of like weird intricacies, and then you add the layer that it's like, well, Danny is like physically teleporting, but also not always physically teleporting, and there's like,
listen to our teleportation episode.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Okay,
From Tone DX 2049, who asks, does Jane have any lesbian, trans, or gender fluid personalities?
I believe on the show,
there's like a male.
Jane is lesbian,
but doesn't she have a male personality as well?
No, she's got some tougher.
Oh, okay.
Like maybe more kind of like mask kind of dumb personalities, but not necessarily male. Like Hammerhead.
Yeah,
is a pretty like,
because I thought that the visualization of Hammerhead.
But Hammerhead is not a man though.
Okay,
right? I in the comics, I don't think I've ever encountered a true like male personality.
Yeah,
inside Jane. Because even like Daddy, like the personality that's like kind of her father, like speaks in Kay's voice and like, is a manifestation of things, isn't like I don't think there is an actual true male personality inside Jane, which would be the trans piece, right? That would be in your not in the right physical body for who you are. 95% sure there isn't one of those. Lesbian, gender fluid, I mean, there are 64 personalities. There must be.
Yes. We just don't really...
I'm not sure how
exploring
explicit that is with them. I'm positive on the show that Jane identifies as lesbian. I don't know why.
Okay.
I'm positive of that. I'm pretty sure she is a lesbian. Mm-hmm. It might have been like an interview or something with Dia Guerrero or something where she said,
"Oh, okay,
that was her approach or something like that."
Of it, yeah.
But yes, 64 personalities. Like there must be a more gender fluid one, or
totally,
or like just a lesbian one or a bisexual one or something like that.
Because like the actual like core personality is straight though, because they were in like a or at least like. Bisexual, because they were in a male relationship, weren't they? Like, because that was part of the show.
So Miranda, the original dominant personality, because Kay recedes away.
Yes,
Kay is like the original who she was before all the alters, but Kay is basically like gone down to the lower levels. The alters protect Kay because Kay was abused by her father. Miranda used to be the dominant personality that drove, and then Miranda was like sexually assaulted and destroys herself.
Yes. Okay.
And then Jane assumes control. So yeah, I mean there are definitely straight or bisexual personalities in there. I think your odds on that out of 64 personalities, they're not all straight.
Totally.
I think it would be a failure of the writing to definitively say they were all straight, especially on the Doom Patrol.
I mean, that would be
But also just generally, you know what I mean? Like all these different personalities have different like perspectives and different motivations, and they're truly different identities, right? Like they're not just like, well, I'm angry Jane and I'm happy Jane. Like they're not just like emotions. They're like different identities, different personalities, they're
different abilities.
They're different abilities. I mean, that's also, that's related to the gene bomb that goes off, gives each personality its own abilities. But like they're different people living in the same body, so it would be wild
if not even one of them.
They have to.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. All right, let's go to the next question from Butt, who asks, are there any trans characters from DC that predate Coagula, or is she the first?
So, Coagula, Kate Godwin.
Yeah.
This is the character that, like, I saw, like, on a list years ago of, like, did you ever hear about this character? And that character comes from the Pollock run. And I read the Pollock run of Doom Patrol, and it was the first Doom Patrol I'd ever read. And that,
Oh,
that's
wow.
why I always go back to that's my run, even
Yeah.
more than the Morrison stuff. I
Yeah.
fucking love the Rachel Pollock Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
So Kate Godwin, Coagula, is a trans character. As far as I can tell, the first trans character in DC. I shouldn't say all of comics, because comics are a very vast and large medium.
And not just the two big ones exist.
But I'm willing to bet first trans character of the big two.
What was the reception of a thing like that? Like, was there...
I mean, for a book like Doom Patrol that was kind of, had maybe a slightly more sophisticated audience anyway, I think relatively good.
Yeah.
Pollock's run in general, I think, was maybe like not as loved at the time. And
Sure.
Pollock in a few interviews has talked about it and said, like, the male thing of when you come on the book is you either do a totally new take or you reject the last guy's take or whatever. Pollock goes like, I like Grant. I like what they did. So I just kind of just slightly diverted to stuff I wanted to talk about, but I like what Grant did. And so I think there's a sort of sense that maybe that was a little off-putting, that someone came in and didn't immediately throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
But so Coagula's powers are actually tied to Rebus. So Kate Godwin is a trans sex worker and has sex with Rebus, who is the intersex being made up of Larry Traynor, Eleanor Poole, and the Negative Spirit. And while they're having sex, the Negative Spirit is released, which bathes the room in radiation.
Whoa.
And gives Kate powers.
Wow.
She has the power to turn solids to liquid and liquid solid. So, Coagula.
Yeah.
She can coagulate and decoagulate.
Yeah.
All matter.
Yeah.
In the comics, she says she auditioned for the tried out for the Justice League. She has a great line where she says, I think they liked my powers, but they couldn't handle me, or whatever, which is kind of fun. She faces off against Codpiece in her first appearance, or one of her first appearances. And Codpiece is essentially like king of the incels. He's a guy that...
Yes, we've talked about him a long time
He has
ago.
this giant,
gun for a dick.
Mech thing that, gadgets come out of his mecha dick.
Yeah.
And he's women don't respect me.
Is that really what he's like? Was he created intentionally to be a parody, or...
Well, he had all of those traits, but in this interview that I read with Rachel Pollock, she was like, I had this great idea to bring Codpiece back and make him explicitly king of the incels.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, very,
Yes.
ahead of its time sort of writing. It's totally the right thing, the right position for that character. But Coagula fights them and joins the Doom Patrol. Starts a kind of relationship with Robot Man.
Yeah.
Then we go into this story that I've talked about before called the Tiresias Wars, which is about these beings called the Tirisii, which were all about kind of change and, take on a new form and flexibility, going up against these things called called the Builders, that were
Structure,
rigidity, stuff is the way it is. Bam, bam, bam. You can see where this is going.
Yeah.
And there's a prophecy that a being that is both man and woman will, save the world or whatever.
Sure.
Important note here that being is not Kate. Because Kate has always been a woman.
Oh, okay.
Right? Rachel Pollock, I think, is also trans, and so it was Kate isn't a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Kate's a woman.
Yes.
And now has the body to match.
Yes.
But Kate and Robot Man get merged together. by Tiresias or
Sure.
Tiresias. And then they, it's sort of a culmination of the Robot Man as trans allegory, and then Kate Godwin as actual trans character come together in this story about like, can we be flexible and change our forms to be who we are, like, or
awesome.
are we stuck in these, artificial structures and stuff like that?
That's awesome.
So it's like there's kind of like a three-pronged trans story that happens through that Pollock run and through the Tiresias Wars, which is pretty cool. But as far as I know, that's your first one.
Wow.
There are more trans characters now. We're starting. There's Alicia Yeoh from Batgirl, sort of side character in Batgirl. Mm-hmm. There's Nia Nal, Dreamer, who started on the Supergirl show and is now like canon in comics. Who's like an ancestor of Dreamer from the Legion of Superheroes, Dreamgirl. And I'm certainly missing. There's others. Galaxy from Galaxy the Prettiest Star, which was its own graphic novel, but set in DC continuity, and is going to be joining Hawkgirl as a supporting character in that book when that starts. Galaxy's slightly different yet again, but essentially, like, we're getting more trans characters, but it basically goes back to Coagula.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
Well, let's go to the last question.
All right.
From Lilith, who asks, what do you think about the implication in Pollock's run that Robot Man's character's progression works as a trans allegory? Do you think the interpretation works nowadays, or does it fall close to the non-binary aliens trope?
Well, here's what I could say about this. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Rachel Pollock is trans, although that's a thing I think I only just learned in the last couple of years. I never really realized. Pollock wrote it, and therefore there's a certain amount of, like, imbuing a truth into that story. Me reading the Pollock run, which I love, I feel a little weird about putting Robot Man in the position of, like, now you understand what it is to be trans. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not that heavy-handed either. I'm being slightly reductive about it. Now, there are pieces that make a ton of sense. Like I just said, it's different. It's less about gender and more about, like, just that idea of dysphoria of, like, I'm human on the inside, but, like, I can't move these fucking fingers, and I like that shit happens to Robot Man all the time. It's like this goddamn body and this stupid, like, so those frustrations in that, I think, are such a window into being more empathetic and that with Kate. But then Robot Man will also be like, so, like, did you used to, like, Robot Man kind of has, like,
he's kind of a dumb dude.
He has, like, like the well-meaning uncle kind of energy of, like, don't say it like that.
Yes.
Like, there's, which I don't hate. I actually think it's kind of nice. It's sort of sweet in a way of, like, he's fucking it all up, but he's trying, bless him.
Yeah.
Me, on the outside of that experience and everything, I read it and I go, I don't know that 100% works. But then also, like, if the creator is trans, who also wrote a trans character, and then also said, this is, like, maybe in comics the closest version of a thing you'll get to helping to, like, open someone's eyes to what does it even mean to be in the wrong body.
Yeah.
For cis people, that's like, like, how are you supposed to wrap your head around that? We've never felt it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think the instinct to use that is fine. I think the execution's mostly pretty good.
Yeah.
But there is a part of me that goes like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm overcorrecting or if other people reading it go like, well, I think we've got a more nuanced way of approaching these like this kind of story now. I truly don't know, but I think it is. I think it mostly holds up. There's only a couple of things that kind of make me go like, I'm not 100% sure that's how we'd write it now. But like in general, all things considered, it's like really, really strong, I think, storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea that like we're now in this age where like these like weird like nerd television shows have all these like prestige actors that are doing voices for them.
Sure.
Like the fact that we have like Brendan Fraser as Robot Man,
Yeah.
and it's like he's like multi like award winning, Oscar winning like actor now who does this like silly voice, and like nobody brings those up in interviews. Like everyone talks about his past or like new movies that he's nobody talks about Doom Patrol when they interview him very often anymore. Like
which is too bad because some really great performance.
But it is funny that it's like this thing exists.
Yeah. I mean, God, I mean, I know we're bummed that like, stuff's getting canceled because there's a kind of like this big sort of soft reboot of all the DC stuff right now. But isn't it wild that we got 4 seasons of the Doom Patrol?
Insane.
And not just that we got 4 seasons of the Doom Patrol, but we got 4 seasons of maybe the most comic accurate Doom Patrol. And the stuff they did change actually just made it better.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there are very few changes in that show where I go like,
yeah.
Like,
truly.
It's such a gem.
Yeah.
Kind of can't believe it exists. It's I hope over time more and more people find it, but it's what a great little piece.
I did skip one question.
Oh, sure.
So from Mullet Overlord, who asks, where would you say John Byrne falls on the list of Doom Patrol's foes? He did, after all, work hard to erase all the forward motion made at Vertigo.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've sort of largely avoided the Byrne run.
Yeah.
On kind of recommendations that it
sucks.
I think the impetus of it was like, let's go back to like the weird science fiction stuff.
Sure.
Because objectively, the Pollock stuff, the Morrison stuff is a lot more like fantasy.
Sure.
Inspired, I would say. Yeah. You think about like Red Jack or the Tiresias stuff. Like we're talking more about like myth and story and things like that, and a lot less about like, it was a crazy gene splicing accident that made animal, vegetable, mineral man. Sure. And so there's an element of like, well, that's a fundamental part of the Doom Patrol too. Let's bring that back. But I think what gets lost in there, I mean, the John Byrne of it all, I think. Like I said, I'm positive that the de-Rebusing of Rebus, I don't think it's ever explained either. I'm pretty sure, though, that demarcation line is the Byrne run.
Is he like notoriously a kind of like a piece of shit anyways, or is that an interpretation you have? Like when I was convinced that maybe there was a problematic artist.
I think it might be a step too far to say.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. Hang on. There's a few pieces to this.
Let's assume all men are bad, first of all.
Byrne wrote like the reboot Superman after Crisis.
Okay.
Kind of reset stuff.
Is this the electric blue? Or is
no.
Oh, no, this is just like a mullet Superman.
No, even before that. It was just like the reset, before Death of Superman, before all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people really like that stuff.
Run. Okay.
But there is like it's missing a little bit of the
like hopefulness.
Not even that, but just like the charm, I think.
Sure.
The Byrne Doom Patrol, you got rid of characters like, I'm pretty sure like Dorothy Spinner's not in there. Crazy Jane, I don't think is really in there. You kind of get rid of like those ones. You go back to like Robot Man, Negative Man, Elastic Woman.
He's just maybe Chief. Not like that fun.
I think that's kind of part of it. And in general, I see a lot of people with a lot of strong opinions about Byrne, and I haven't read anything that was so objectionable that I was like, fuck this guy.
Yes.
But he just kind of seems like...
He hasn't done anything cancelable, but he just
it's just like maybe,
not fun.
It's maybe not the stuff I'm the most interested in.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to try and pull this up. I think this was today. So I'm just going to go to Twitter and look at look at my likes. Someone put something up that I was like...
Yeah, Byrne liked our stuff.
hang on. Nope, not that. Hang on. Sorry, this is not good.
Podcasting?
Not good podcasting.
Yeah.
But something just... John Byrne. Oh, okay. This is not related to the Doom Patrol, and it's not even related to like his approach to Superman as a character.
Yeah.
But I do think that this might sum up the vibe of Byrne that is kind of shitty.
Okay.
This is a quote from John Byrne about Christopher Reeve.
Uh-oh.
I've noticed that people have begun referring to Christopher Reeve as a hero. I do not wish to take away one iota of the courage he must have needed not to wake up screaming every single day. But the hard truth is there was nothing heroic in what happened to him or how he dealt with it. In fact, as far as how he dealt with it, he didn't even have a choice. We could imagine he spent every hour of every day, when not in front of the cameras, begging family members to simply kill him and get it over with, but none of them did, so he had no choice but to deal with each day as it came. Heroism, I believe, involves choice.
What the
Which is like an insanely callous thing to say. Like,
also, no one asked for him to say that.
well, I don't know. Someone in an interview might have prompted something, but
like,
this does. I mean, this isn't a new quote. I think someone just found it recently.
but
this has a lot of the like Liam Neeson vibes of like, you didn't have to say this.
Yeah. There is no question that could have possibly been asked to make him respond in that way.
Oh, sorry. I'm like learning things in real time here.
Okay.
He, I guess, at one point described immigrants as ungrateful little shits.
Okay. Yeah.
And I guess at one point he did compare trans people to pedophiles. So
Okay,
never mind.
yeah, no,
Byrne is an
bad.
unequivocal piece of shit.
Yeah. We don't like Byrne.
So there you
he
go.
can burn in hell.
Here's the thing. I wouldn't say I've read even a ton of Byrne's stuff. I mean, it's not like it is Superman. Superman's like, and fuck you, immigrant.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know what
I'm the only alien that's illegal allowed to be here.
Because I mostly just read my comics and go away. I don't like find every interview people do. I think I've just not known necessarily, but yeah. So
I'm too busy reading comics while my kid's doing gymnastics. I don't have time to read interviews.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hang on. Oh, he had this to say about Jessica Alba being cast as Sue Storm back when Fantastic Four came out. Personal prejudice. Hispanic and Latino women with blonde hair look like hookers to me.
Whoa.
No matter how clean or cute they are.
Yikes.
Somehow those skin tones that look so good with dark hair just don't work for me with lighter shades. Like I said, personal prejudice.
I mean, at least he calls it prejudice.
So,
Jesus.
So there you go. Turns out all these years, all I had to do was just type in the words John Byrne.
And you would realize that
so there you go.
He's a bad guy.
I feel like I'm not messing much with the Byrne Doom Patrol.
Yeah. Nope. And now...
I've generally avoided it, like I said, on recommendations, and most people are just like everything kind of interesting or charismatic or charming about the runs that preceded it is gone in the Byrne run. And like I think that's relatively obvious, even like looking at like the covers and stuff of it.
Yeah.
So it's never really hooked me because... Again, I got into Doom Patrol on the Pollock run, which is like the most myth kind of version of it. So,
by the way, why read that when you could instead read a great Flash run by Ethan Van Cipher?
Yeah, yikes! Fuck.
It sucks that it's also a good run,
but wow. You know, that's a good run, mostly on the back of John's, though.
Fair, yes, absolutely, of course. All right, well, that was the last question.
Yeah.
If you want
to, people are bad, man.
Yeah, I know
it's bad out
Just
there.
assume that if they're a man, they're probably bad. If they're a man older than us or us, assume that they are bad.
Do you know who we didn't talk about in all of this talk about queer characters in Doom Patrol? Is the Brain and Monsieur Mala.
Oh, yeah.
From the Brotherhood of Evil.
Well, guess what?
Doom Patrol villains who appear in like the old run of Doom Patrol, but then the retcon that happens in the Morrison, or the reveal, I guess, that happens in the Morrison run, is that there's an issue where Mala's brain. Mala is a super smart gorilla, by the way. The brain is a brain in a jar.
Yeah.
Mala's brain gets put into like a defunct or like a spare robot man body. And in that body, Brain confesses to Mala that he loves him, and Mala's like, I love you too. The body explodes though, but it like happens as they kiss.
Oh, sure.
But, you know, the Brain and Monsieur Mala are both like male identifying. It's a queer relationship there.
Love that.
You know, so it extends to the villains too. Like, truly, Doom Patrol is like such the queer corner of DC.
I love that.
I think it's nice now that it's not just only in that
there,
corner,
but it also
I mean?
like it stems from that corner.
I mean, I think you got to credit a lot of the hard work that was done by Doom Patrol.
100%. All right, well, it's a whole month in May.
May.
So, what is next week's episode?
Oh shit.
Because you can send your question for next week's episode.
You know, I was so hung up on getting the theme poll out for the Golden Agers. Maybe let's just have a little think here. Do you know what? I'm just going to do something real broad here.
Yeah. Speaking of queer characters, let's do something broad.
Jesus. Next week, let's talk about stories by queer creators.
Love that. Was hoping we'd do that.
Very broadly. So, you know, that could be modern stories. It could be old stories. We could talk about the Pollock Run again.
Absolutely.
We could talk about Galaxy the Prettiest Star. We could talk about Steve Orlando's Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, if you know a character.
We could talk about, Steve Orlando did Apollo and Midnighter. So it could be queer creators writing queer stories or just other stuff they've done. But let's talk about the work of queer creators next week.
You could send those questions to our various social media platforms like our Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast,
our Twitter
at Dr. DC,
our Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast,
our email,
drdcpodcast@gmail.com,
our Dom Reddit.
Oh yeah. r/Dr_DC.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can have any.
I read this Reddit one thread at a time.
You can upvote any question you want as long as it's DC related.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Your doc phone is always open.
208-917-3238.
Go and join our TikTok.
We're mostly just lurking over there at Dr. DC.
Yeah, lurking. Much like. Yeah, fuck yeah. Go to our website.
drdcpodcast.com or .ca.
You can give us a 5-star review as long as it's on Apple Podcast or Facebook. We will find it and read it. Otherwise, take a screenshot and send it over to our email.
Baby.
If you want to give us a little bit of money, you can get some content in return on our Patreon.
Patreon.com/DrDC. There's a $1, $5, $7 level. They all give you access to the Doc Squad, our awesome fan community. And at the $5 level, you get access to the Double Dose, our weekly bonus episode. This week, we're talking about Picard Season 3, baby.
Oh, yeah. You want to get on that.
So strap the fuck in. And for the Golden Agers, you get, at the $7 level, there's theme pools. Right now, you're in the middle of Toretto Talks, the series I'm doing with my sister about the Fast and Furious. It's Hobbs and Shaw this week. Weird week.
Yeah. You can skip this one.
But give us the money anyway. Fuck.
I like to think that our Discord server is like the Doom Patrol of the comic podcast communities.
Okay. Like a group of lovable weirdos.
Yeah. That's like very like queer open and wonderful.
They're lovely.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck you're doing. Yeah.
I'm shaking things up.
Great.
Speaking of shaking things up, why don't you subscribe to our other podcast?
Ghostfacers, a Supernatural rewatch. We're going through every single episode of the CW Supernatural. We talk real world monster lore, behind the scenes stuff about the show.
Cream pies.
Cream pies. It's been cream pie heavy the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, real heavy cream pies.
Yeah, like pretty deep cream pies, I would say.
Viscous cream pies.
Yeah. Don't remember what I was going to say there. But yeah, go check it out. It's a lot of fun. We're partway into season 7 right now.
That's right, baby. That is it for this week. Ciao, ciao.
Adios.
All the superheroes, they always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure, they are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.
You always do.
You
it
always
first.
say goodbye, bitch?
No, you just always say adios first and then I say ciao ciao, and then you didn't.
Well, whatever. I'll fix it.